Dillian the Body Snatcher White here. It's a champ. Big up to Sporting Icon. Subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
Okay, so a lot of you have been dropping comments about the altercation between John Fury and Dean Whyte at the Tyson Fury Dillian Whyte press conference yesterday at the face-to-face. Of course, the press conference was very cordial. There was no mudslinging or anything like that. It was a cool press conference. And as I said before, and as I've always said, this fight doesn't need any hype. Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte sells itself due to both of their own name brands. Both of these deserve this fight for the World Heavyweight Championship as the main headliner at Wembley Stadium. They've earned this particular right. But unfortunately, John Fury does what John Fury does. He tries to overshadow it. Why? Because he's an attention seeker. He wants the limelight. He lives vicariously through his son. This is what John Fury does. John Fury has been for quite some time now trying to perpetuate this narrative that he's some kind of tough guy, that he's from the streets. He'll fight any man, anyone, any place, any time, on the cobbles, in the gym, bare knuckle, you name it. John Fury's down for it. John Fury's nearly 60 years old. And one of the reasons why he does it is because you find that, especially on his social media, on Instagram, where he will post pictures of himself with his top off, you see these absolute rimmers, these clowns in his comment section. Oh, Big John, looking good, Big John. I wouldn't fight a Big John. Definitely the toughest 50-yard man that I've ever seen. You know, these absolute women is what they are. They call themselves men, they're women. And if you're one of these people doing that in his comment section, shame on you. You ain't no real man yourself. Now, John, he wants to live vicariously through his son. I think that's pretty obvious. He's very proud of his son, Tyson. Of course, he's very proud of all his kids. And why shouldn't he be? He's a doting father. You can see that, for sure. And you have to give him massive credit. But at the same time, he's doing what he should be doing. He's a father. You should always back up your kids regardless, okay? But John Fury, he's been gaslighted so much by the Tyson Fury fanatical fans, those who are trying to rim John in the hope that they get a follow back from John on social media as a way to try and maybe interact with Tyson. I mean, John's too stupid to realise any of that. But his head is so filled of, well, Tyson is a world heavyweight champion because of me, because of my DNA, because I'm his father, because he come out of my balls. These are the kind of things that John has said in the past. In fact, it's only yesterday he said that John Fury said that Tyson is the kind of fighter that he is because of hundreds of years worth of breeding. And it's all accumulated up to Tyson. I mean, shut up, John. Just shut your mouth. It's absolutely ridiculous. The reason Tyson is as good as what he is isn't because it's natural, isn't because it's DNA, it's not because of any of that. It's because of the tutelage of your two brothers, Huey and Peter. Tyson is the fighter because of your two brothers, not because of you. Now, I'm not going to say John had no input in the beginning part of Tyson's career, especially as an amateur, maybe the very early parts of Tyson's pro career. I'm not going to say that he had no input whatsoever. He would have done. But I always saw John, even back then, as somebody who always wanted to get involved, thinks he knows best, but he doesn't. And to be honest with you, if Tyson loses this fight against Dillian Whyte on Saturday night, one of the reasons will be because John interfered with the camp. I'm telling you, that will be one of the reasons. Okay? But John just wants to grab the headlines. He wants to grab the limelight. That's what he does. But the truth is, him stepping to Dean, and I have to say full credit to Dean, because a lot of people would have just grabbed John in that instant. I mean, can you imagine if Dean had just reached out, just one hand around the throat of John? Within 3 seconds, John's neck would have been snapped and he'd have been in A&E on a ventilator. I mean, it's one thing for John to square up to, say, I don't know, the average Joe, but what you don't do is step up to Dean. Dean is a huge, huge man. He's got a background in mixed martial arts. Of course, he's been around the boxing game for a long, long time as well. What you don't do is square up against Dean. Now, had it been Shane, for example, had he stepped up to Dean, of course, we're having a different conversation, because Shane, he can look after himself, is the first one. But secondly, Shane wouldn't have done that unless provoked. Shane strikes me as a kind of guy, a cool guy, a level-headed guy, someone who thinks before they speak, somebody who has common sense between his ears. And I'm pretty sure Tyson understood as well, and Shane would have definitely understood as well. You're in London. This is Dillian Whyte's home patch. Dillian would have had a huge entourage there. Not everybody would have been on stage. And had things got out of control, it would have been quite frightening. It really would have been. These guys are from Brixton. They don't mess about. They don't mess about. And it wouldn't have just been a few pushes and shoves and maybe a chair thrown at the press conference to face off. No. This would have spilled over into the streets. It would have done. It would have got real ugly, and a lot of people would have been arrested. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe why the press conference was quite tame. Tyson didn't want to say the wrong thing to start something kicking off. Not at all. Not because they're afraid or anything like that, but just because it's sensible. Okay? Now, at the weigh-in tomorrow on Friday, will it be as cordial as what it was at the press conference? I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I fully expect Tyson to get on the scales. As soon as I have the face-to-face, he'll probably get into Dillian's face. I'm going to knock you out, you dosser, you bum, and whatever else, and then maybe walk off. He'll probably do something like that, just have like a little bit of a dig. But I wouldn't expect any kind of pushing and shoving and all that kind of thing. But again, Tyson, he understands as well that some of his fan base, not his fan base, his fanatical fan base, are there purely for fighting. Look at the arenas. We've seen fights kick off at Tyson fights on quite a few occasions. And if Tyson loses on Saturday night, you know these degenerates are going to start kicking off in the stadium. The police are going to have to be on standby if that happens. In fact, even if Tyson wins, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them do it to try and trash up Wembley Stadium. Because this is the mentality of some people. Tyson understood that, which is why when he got the official draw against Wilder in the first fight, he was outwardly accepting it. Like, yeah, okay, fine, it's a fair result, whatever else. But that was because he didn't want to be kicking off anything with the crowd, because he knows what some of his people are about. These radicals. They're not there to support Tyson. They're there to try and be tough guys themselves. A lot of them have the John Fury mentality. Difference is, some of them are probably young enough to cause a bit of damage. John Fury is not. He's not. When you look at legitimate tough guys around Fury's and that, obviously Tyson is a legitimate tough guy for sure. Shane is probably a legitimate tough guy. Peter Fury is a legitimate tough guy. Huey will be too. John, no, he's not. And you know that he's not because he tries to talk himself up as if he is. Legitimate tough guys don't need to do that. They don't need to do that. They're calm. And if something kicks off, they'll be there. They don't have to talk it up. But very disappointing from John, much like he did with the Jake Paul and his son Tommy press conference. That was embarrassing. And John Fury, yet again, has to embarrass himself. This overweight, nearly 60-year-old man who's looking more and more like Gollum these days, trying to get in the face of Dean Whyte. It's not Dean you've necessarily got to worry about. It's the rest of the entourage. Shane understood that. Tyson understood that. But John, he's the one who should be the leader of this clan. He should be. But he seems to be the liability if we really look at it. Very disappointing from John. Very disappointing. But what can you do? This is John Fury. He can defend himself. Well, you know, I've had a moment and I feel this and blah. John, just stay out of it, okay? Just stay out of it. Stay at the back of the crowd, okay? You didn't even need to be right up next to Tyson at that point. It ain't about you. This is about Tyson. This is about Dillian Whyte. It's not about anybody else at all. And if anything did kick off, John, you ain't doing nothing. If anything, you're going to be the one that'll end up in the ambulance. Anyway, drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, catch you on the next video.